What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, we are one day away from OTAs, back on the field, possibly the first time we get to see Russell Wilson in a Pittsburgh Steelers practice uniform, throwing footballs to guys like George Pickens, Roman Wilson, Pat Freiermuth, so on and so forth. Plenty of action, but we got some very interesting headlines. The Pittsburgh Steelers are reportedly in contact with a former All-Pro from New Orleans, and on top of that, Joey Porter's getting some praise, but we got other names that I think deserve a couple of eyes when it heads into the 2024 season. It's been a beautiful weekend here in the Berg, outside of some tornadoes, but besides that, pretty nice. How you feeling, my friend?
Feeling good. Yeah, I'm safe from a tornado. It was funny. Good. My roommate had to go. He had to go visit his girlfriend's family in New Jersey, but he left Pittsburgh right as the tornadoes hit down in, I think, Lawrenceville, Highland Park, wherever they were.
Park, right down. Right. It literally happened at the reservoir. And my fiance, I was gone this weekend, obviously. My fiance called me and she was like, "Dude, there's an actual tornado. You could see the pictures of it from our house." I'm like, yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. It was insane. He was literally driving away I'm pretty sure he could see them in his rearview mirror as he was driving off at 376. But I'm all good. I'm excited for this week. This is important time in the media calendar. This is OTAs. Yes. This is where we start setting agendas. We start staking our claim. We're saying this is going to be my guy for the coming season, where we start to really, lay the groundwork for training camp. This is important days for us.
I agree. This is the beginning. This is real. This is who's going to show up. Where's everybody at? How good do people look? I mean, again, I always bring up George Pickens. He was the easiest name to recognize, and he's probably the biggest standout that you saw. But there's been a couple throughout the years. You've had the George Pickens looks like an absolute monster at OTAs. It doesn't matter if you're tackling him or not, because I don't know if you possibly could tackle him. There's been the TJ Watt looks like an absolute freak. Just honestly standing there, just looking at TJ Watt going, damn, that's a scary human being. There's been a lot of those names. I'm excited to see who that is this week in OTAs. Plus, it's football. This is every day we're getting closer to football, and OTAs it's a good week. It's a good 3 weeks for the city of Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh Steelers. No doubt about it. We're going to dive into what we're looking for there. But first, there's a headline popped up over the weekend, according to Around the 412, fan of the show, our friend of the show, Zachary Smith, says that the Pittsburgh Steelers have been in contact with former New Orleans Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas. Nothing's gotten done to this point. Don't know how deep those conversations have gone, but certainly a headline worth monitoring. You hear Michael Thomas and the Pittsburgh Steelers talking. What were your thoughts?
My thoughts were I don't see much upside here. I think the only upside is that he'd be cheap, and that's because he has been injury prone. He hasn't played a ton of games, only played 13 games over the past 3 seasons, 20 games over the past 4 seasons, missed an entire season with an injury. And then on top of that, his production hasn't been that impressive. I mean, it's been a while since he was kind of who he was in his prime, which was, the leading receiver in the NFL, and that was awesome. Mm-hmm. But it's not really who Michael Thomas is now. And I don't think even if he was that kind of player, how much does he fit into what the Steelers need? I don't know. I just don't think the profile of Michael Thomas, he's not a particularly great deep threat. He's not a particularly great run blocker. And that's all on top of the vast majority of production in his career kind of being in the past. So for a receiver who's turning 30 and was facing a ton of injury questions before he even got to 30, I don't really see what the upside is for the Steelers. I mean, it's another one of those, we can take a cheap flyer on a guy who could maybe turn into something, but they've already done that, 4 different times this offseason. So what would one more be? What would one more do for you?
Yeah, I agree. I think if Michael Thomas was a guy where the production was down, it was like an Allen Robinson situation where the production is down, but he's still there. He's a reliable set of hands. He's a mentor. Okay. I get it. If that's going to be your last wide receiver 3 option, if this is just a guy to come in here and be the next Allen Robinson for a much cheaper deal, I thought that made sense last year, even if he wasn't the most productive guy. The fact that he can't stay on the field, you're going to take a flyer on a guy that you're banking on most likely getting injured throughout the season. not being able to play a full year for you, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. If this was wide receiver 4 territory, if this was when the Steelers, who signed Gallup, Vegas, if this is Vegas signing Michael Gallup, where they already have their wide receiver core, there's no issues there, and this is just a depth piece, it makes a lot of sense. But in Pittsburgh, you're looking for a guy who's going to start. You're looking for a guy who's going to take the field every single down and be a contributor to this offense and take some of the pressure off of George Pickens and Roman Wilson. I just don't see a guy who's been injury prone being that dude. It just doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Again, if this is your second last edition, or if you're super high on Calvin Austin, like if the Steelers are Calvin Austin's our dude, he's going to be a menace. We fully expect him to have a breakout season. If that's where they stand, which I don't think that's where they stand. I don't know for certain, but I don't think that's where they stand. Then it makes a little bit of sense. But to bring a guy in who can't stay on the field more than 10 games in the most at 10 games in the last 4 years, you're looking at a guy who's too big of a risk to be a reliable set of hands and a piece to the offense that you need on the field.
Right. And that would be the worst thing. Like, the production is the production, but if he could have done what he did last year, which was, 450 yards over 10 games, like, I think you could have lived with that as long as he stayed on the field. But if he's only playing 10 games, starting 7, that's not really good enough for the Steelers. I feel like that's not reliable enough for a team that wants to make it pretty far in the postseason and is going to be leaning on rookies and young guys. Like, if you're bringing in a veteran, he's got to be able to stay on the field. He's got to be consistent. He's got to be around. And that just hasn't been Michael Thomas for the past 4 years. I would believe, like I said, the only upside is that you could probably get him on a cheap deal. And I think there's a reason you'd be getting him on a cheap deal, though.
Exactly. And I'm going to keep tossing out there. Like, if the Steelers are looking for a veteran to just come in here and be another Allen Robinson, which I'm not opposed to that. Like, I think at this point in the offseason, if that's what you're working with, it's not the best case scenario. You could have definitely did better, but it's better than nothing. At some point, you just got to fill a hole. Hunter Renfrow makes a lot more sense than Michael Thomas. He's the name that you got to compare who's out there, who's left to who you're talking to. And, Hunter Renfrow's a guy that at least is going to stay on the field. He could pass block. He could run block. He could catch the football. He plays in the slot. Like, he's not a superstar by no means anymore, but neither is Michael Thomas. So you just have to guess who's out there or compare who's out there with who the Steelers are negotiating with or in contact with or whoever. Michael Thomas just doesn't seem to be that guy. It doesn't seem to be an option that makes a lot of sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That being said, they've been making splash after splash this offseason, so it would not surprise me if in a week or a couple of days or whatever, we got a notification that said the Pittsburgh Steelers have agreed to a 1-year deal with former Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas, but I don't think it adds enough to the offense to feel reliable in this situation. I just don't. I don't think so. Let me ask you this, because I keep bringing up Hunter Renfrow, and I think that's a name. Is that a guy that, I don't know, at this point, at what point do you look at a guy like Hunter Renfrow, who's 28 years old, is coming off a not great seasons? He's got 1,000-yard year. The last 2 years he's played. He last year he played 17 games. The year before that he only played 10, but he's got a combined like just over 500 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not really reliable when it comes to big statistics. At what point do you start to just consider that as an option over all these splash guys who maybe aren't the people that the Steelers should be looking at?
Yeah, honestly, I would have considered Hunter Renfrow a little bit earlier. I'd still consider him, but I think there's something to be said for kind of the inconsistent quarterback play that Hunter Renfrow's dealt with, especially earlier in his career. Like, I think that there's still something there. I think he can still be a pretty reliable option, especially kind of in that intermediate, like, run some short routes, get some yards after the catch. I think Hunter Renfrow is capable of that. I think he could be a little bit of a safety valve for Russell Wilson this season. But it's the kind of move where I figured, if the Steelers could have made that move, they would have done it earlier. And it seems like they were more interested in guys like, Van Jefferson and Quez. Maybe Van Jefferson and Quez Watkins were just easier to get at that point. You're not giving up an asset like you would to get Renfrow, because it'd have to be a trade, right? I'm not wrong about that, right? He's not a free agent, is he?
No, Renfro's a free agent.
Oh, he's a free. Okay, well, still, like, I think the point still holds that if they had wanted to make that move, they would have done it, and they clearly see something more in Quez Watkins and Van Jefferson. What that is, I'm not really sure, but it doesn't seem like they are interested at all in Renfrow, which I don't know if that. I mean, I would have at least been interested in him as a, hey, you've like been there and done that before, at least at some point in your career. I think he has a little bit more on his resume than a Van Jefferson or a Quez Watkins. I mean, you can say something about their playoff experience, but I don't know. It's not like those guys were the driving engines behind, the Eagles in the playoffs or, the Rams when they won the Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
Renfrow, like, I don't see how he's worse than any of those options. And in fact, I think he might even have a little bit of a higher ceiling than those two. If that's who you're comparing it to, like them and Scotty Miller or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's who I view it as. Is like, why are you taking flyers on guys who don't have it? Like, at least Hunter Renfrow, maybe there's something there. Let me toss another name at you. McCole Hardman, still free agent, 26 years old. Obviously, really tough season last year with Kansas City and then the Jets. But his time in Kansas City, he's been okay. Nothing crazy, but at least showed enough potential where the Jets last year thought they had something in him. That a name? 26 years old? Definitely not going for a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, I think it could be. I mean, I don't really know at this point. Like, I don't really know what the Steelers are looking for because they're clearly still interested in wide receivers. They clearly keep signing guys and then not being satisfied with who they've signed, which I think is really weird. But I guess Hardman could be an option. I think I don't know. I kind of throw out last season. Like, that was it. Hardman isn't a superstar, but I don't think he's that bad either. I don't think he's as bad as he played last season. I don't think he's going to continue to drop as many passes as he did last year. So I like the injection of speed that he would bring. I think he's experienced too, and I think that really helps a lot as well. I think he has a higher ceiling, whether or not he'd actually be better than, a Scotty Miller or something like that. I'm not really sure, but I think he at least has probably a higher ceiling, right? Just because of his athletic ability.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes twofold. One, it fits the bill. If the Steelers are bringing in nothing but speed, as much speed as humanly possible, well, McCole Hardman's fast, so that works. And definitely, I think he's a better Quez Watkins. He's a better Scotty Miller. He's probably, at this point in his NFL career, a better Cordero Patterson, just as a wide receiver for what you're looking for. I mean, he's definitely better than Van Jefferson. I just think that his upside's there, and at 26 years old, why not? Like, you're bringing in a bunch of guys that don't really make a lot of sense. Maybe just bring in another one, Like, who cares? Worst case scenario doesn't work out. You don't got to bring him onto your 53-man roster. You can just test the surface and see if it works out. I think it probably makes them, of all the free agents, like, if you go down the list, it's Renfrow, Michael Thomas, Russell Gage, Jamal Agnew, McCole Hardman, Jakeem Grant, Randall Cobb, Marquise Godwin. There's just, I mean, you could go Sterling Shepard if that's really who you're looking for. But I mean, at 31 years old, people are like, oh, well, that guy could have been something. Yeah, he could have been something 10 years ago. He never turned into anything. I think McCole Hardman might make the most sense. I don't think any of them make a lot of sense, but I think that if we're just basing it off of the Steelers are just not satisfied yet, why not? Like, why not bring in the young guy with some potential?
Right, exactly. Like, that's what I'm looking for at this point. You have plenty of receivers who are kind of your baseline. Like, if we need to throw someone in there, this is our guy. But I would like to see a little bit more upside. I guess I'm trying to think of a more creative word, but a way to say it. But I want someone who can kind of get you excited. And I think the Steelers have gone with a ton of safe options, and I think they can afford to kind of reach for someone who might not work out, but gives you a little bit more there, gives you a little bit more potential to be something great.
Yeah, I will say this, that I was gone away and I was hanging out with some buddies this weekend, and one of them, who is a Steelers fan, but a Steelers fan his whole life, he's like, yeah, I won't lie to you, I'm pretty excited about Scotty Miller. And I was like, okay.
Why?
I'm glad it worked. Like, I'm glad the Steelers got somebody, so maybe there's more out there. Who knows? But I was like, I didn't want to kill him. I was like, oh, that's nice. I hope.
Yeah, I'm glad you're excited about him.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's see what happens. So, I won't give you my opinion, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, cool. On the next thing I want to talk about, just transitioning into something new here, the Pittsburgh Steelers got a couple of guys who I think could turn into something big in 2024. But the 33rd team highlighted one of those names. That's Joey Porter Jr. saying, quote, if there's one way to respect a cornerback, it's to avoid him in coverage. Porter had the 7th lowest rate of targets per coverage snaps among corners, which is partly why his raw production numbers aren't awe-inspiring. It's a sign of good coverage, not a sign of lack of production. Porter will go into year 2 as the clear top corner for the Steelers defense on a pass coverage unit that was improved this offseason. You look at Joey Porter Jr., you say that's a guy that most likely is going to take a step forward. The Steelers are going to bank on him to be a shutdown corner 100%. But you also have names flying on both sides of the ball, I think, who have a lot of potential and maybe some untapped potential as well. You look at this, we're about to start OTAs tomorrow. Who's your breakout candidate for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2024?
Yeah, and this one feels a little obvious because he had such a high pedigree coming out of college and everything, and he was a starter right away. But I think Broderick Jones is due to take a pretty significant step forward. You look at his snap count last year, he played, I think like 3/4 of the season out of position. He was at right tackle, and I think he's going to make that transition to left tackle. Troy Fatanu's going to slide over there at right tackle, putting Broderick in his natural position, I think is going to do wonders for him, especially as a pass blocker. I think he was a pretty decent run blocker last year, but his pass blocking, did leave a little bit to be desired. And I think he's really going to, once you get him back into a place where he feels more comfortable, I think he's really going to be able to stick some steps forward and show you what he's really able to do. I think that he is going to be an anchor on that offensive line. I really thought he was a good pick when the Steelers took him, but just kind of forced to play out of position. The way the Steelers lined up, the personnel that they had, just kept him from being who he truly is. And we know how difficult that swapping sides of the line is for just about every young player. I think can get kind of lost in the shuffle for people who aren't around every day. But these guys really, playing right tackle versus left tackle is like a completely different position. It is a completely different position. So I think getting Broderick back into a place where he's comfortable will really allow him to flourish. That's my big choice this year. I think Broderick's set for a big year. I think he's going to be really dominant.
That's a good one. Was not expecting you to say Broderick. When you started saying second year guy, I thought you were going Keanu Benton, but I like Broderick. I did
consider it. I did consider Benton.
Yeah, I think Benton's a good option, but I didn't pick him either, even though I think that we both agree that he should have a big year. Broderick Jones is a good one. I agree with you. I think changing sides back to the left side is the move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let him just be a force. Let him just be your guy on the left side. Develop both of them and see where it goes. I agree. I think Broderick could be in for a massive year, especially working. I think what's going to benefit him the most, that is a little bit undervalued, is getting a full year. If this is the Steelers' plan to move him back to left tackle, to get a full year next to Isaac Seumalo is going to do wonders for what this kid could do, because you are learning from a Super Bowl winning veteran, a guy who's done this for a long time at a productive rate, he's a no-nonsense guy, man, a few words, and you get to learn from him for a full year. I think that's a huge move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I agree. I think that could be massive. He is a great breakout candidate. I'm going to go two of them. One of them, I think he's a little bit too far past the young breakout star, but I still think he's worthy of mention, and that's Pat Freiermuth. I think that this is a year for him. Like he's dealt with injuries, he's dealt with bad offensive coordinators, he's dealt with Matt Canada refusing to throw him the football or play him in the middle of the field, and I get it. There's a lot of slack on Russell Wilson about he doesn't do that either. This is not Russell Wilson's game. Look, Kyle Pitts broke the Falcons rookie receiving record his first year in the NFL. I think that Arthur Smith can utilize Pat Freiermuth in a lot of ways that this offense has not over the last couple of years, and that's something that should excite guys. I think Pat is in for a massive season if he could stay on the field, and with the contract year ahead of him, I just think that this is a big year for him, and I think the offense is going to utilize him a ton more than they already have. Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I was just gonna say. I mean, we just got done talking about how shaky it seems like the Steelers' wide receiver situation is. I mean, Pat Freiermuth, this is your time, man.
Yes.
Barring some massive addition at wide receiver, he's gonna be a focal point of defenses. He's gonna be a guy that defense has to pay attention to. But it's because if there's not a ton of other receiver options, Pat Freiermuth is one of your more reliable options, as a pass catcher. So going to be a lot of opportunities for him to deliver on that breakout season.
100%. And on the other side of the ball, I think an interesting name, a fun name I'm excited for is Nick Herbig. I think Nick Herbig this is the year where I'm a big Alex Highsmith guy. I think Alex Highsmith is very undervalued for what he brings. I think people stare too much on the sack stat instead of the everything else that he does across from TJ Watt. But I think this is the year Herbig becomes like, oh my gosh, Steelers got a dude in this guy. I think Herbig's a stud. I think learning behind TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, especially with Marcus Golden there last year, did wonders for this guy. I thought he did really well as a rookie, especially a mid-round rookie. And to come in here year 2 with a bigger plate, I guess, a bigger role within the defense is something that I think he takes advantage of. I look at Nick Herbig as a dude who should have a big year. Like, it could potentially beat Alex Highsmith in sacks, and I'm not saying that's a better year than Alex Highsmith. I'm just saying that stat-wise, he could be looking at a year with like 8, 9, maybe 10 sacks.
Wow, I think that's pretty lofty. I love Nick Herbig too. I think you're spot on. This guy is set to take another step forward. I'm just curious what you think about his role. Like, how much is he actually going to be able to play on a team that has an Alex Highsmith, a TJ Watt, and a Marcus Golden? Like, is he ahead of Marcus Golden on the depth chart? Is he a guy?
Marcus Golden's gone. Marcus Golden's gone.
Oh, right. But I mean, like, there's. Yeah, I guess I still want to ask that question though. Like, how much is he going to see an uptick in reps now, even with, with Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt ahead of him? Like, how often are you going to be sending Nick Herbig out there when you've already got these two studs at the bookends on either side of the line?
So last year he played 17% of the snaps. I don't know what I'm going to pull up Marcus Golden's now. Marcus Golden played a whopping, where are we at here? Snap counts 22%. So say this is now your guy. Say Herbig's the dude who plays 25-30% of the snaps on defense, because the Steelers, whether it's 3 outside linebacker sets or just trying to keep TJ and Alex Highsmith healthy, 30%. So that's doubled his production or his snap count from what he did in 2023. Last year he finished with 3 sacks. So I think that there's a shot that, he could double that minimum. I look at him as a 3 outside linebacker guy, a guy where the Steelers try to utilize their 3 outside linebacker sets, allow TJ Watt to move a little bit because they love when TJ gets to kind of disguise himself, whether in the middle of the line or, move inside a little bit, have 2 guys there. I think Herbig is versatile enough to be that 3rd outside linebacker that plays kind of like rushing the A gap or wherever you put him along the defensive line, standing up. And I think that he's good relief. So I expect, 30%. I think he takes 30% of the defensive snaps this upcoming season. And that's still guessing that they add another outside linebacker. I just think he's going to be the clear-cut outside linebacker 3. And I think it like slowly progresses throughout the year. Like, I think as we get later into the season, you're going to see Highsmith and Watt playing less, especially if the Steelers are winning, so that they stay healthy for the playoffs and Herbig continues to develop.
Yeah, I could see that. I think the Steelers would have to be winning a lot in order to feel comfortable, because you can see the impact of TJ Watt as soon as he steps off the field. Yeah. It doesn't even have to be, for an entire game or an entire half. It could be, a few snaps. It could be an entire series, and you just see what kind of level the defense goes to when he's not there. Nick Herbig would have to be, I don't know, in my opinion, he'd have to be real good to kind of earn. I guess he's kind of the de facto 3rd outside linebacker right now. So you gotta kind of see who else they add, because I agree. I think they are going to add someone. If it's not, re-signing Marcus Golden, it could be, someone else. But I think it's going to take a lot for Nick Herbig to kind of leapfrog a veteran in that way. Not saying he can't do it at all. I think he was really good last year. I completely agree with you. But it was in limited action, and I'm curious as to what the Steelers see as far as, projecting outward. Like, there's certain positions you can see them say, yeah, it doesn't look like we have a ton here, but it's because we have a lot of faith in our rookie or our 2nd-year guy that we're not adding someone of real significance here. I'm curious to see who's their kind of next outside linebacker addition here. Like, because I'm not sure they view Herbig in the same way they view a Keanu Benton or something like that. Like, I think Keanu, they expect to be not a star maybe, but like a pretty starting caliber talent right away, or starting caliber talent this year. I'm not sure if they view Nick Herbig in the same light. I think he's just as talented. He's talented enough to get there. But I have a feeling that they think he needs a little bit more time to grow. And so that would play right into what you said about, later in the year, this guy takes on a much bigger role and ends up being a much bigger force for them than he was earlier in the year.
Yeah, I think that they, the three outside linebacker sets is just what intrigues me. I think he takes advantage of them. I agree with you. I don't think that he's at the level of Keanu Benton or Broderick Jones or Joey Porter Jr. or any of those guys, but I do think that I think he's talented enough to. I think what I saw from Nick Herbig last year on tape was much more impressive than what his stat line showed, and I expect this year to kind of, him to kind of say like, "Hey, look I'm here and we're ready," and we'll see what happens. But I am a big Nick Herbig guy heading into the season, and I'm excited to see where he goes from there. Speaking of which, we are headed to OTAs tomorrow. It is day one. I guess no pads, but still first day. Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren. No Cam Hayward showing up for OTAs as he waits for a contract. What are you looking for? What are you looking for day one, Steelers OTAs as we head to the south side?
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing to me is that slot cornerback battle. I think, you've got at least 4 names that I think you could consider as options there, or I guess 3. I'll say 3 names. I think Beanie Bishop, yeah, 4 names. I was right. Anthony Averett, Beanie Bishop, and then Corey Trice and Darius Rush. I think all of those guys have realistic chances to be your starting slot corner, and just kind of who emerges from that group. I mean, you've got an interesting mix of guys there. You've got, Averett, who's been there and done that. He's been a starting corner in the NFL before, and he's the veteran. Then you've got, Rush and Trice, who are technically second-year guys, technically veterans, but neither of them have actually stepped onto an NFL field before. And then Beanie Bishop, the kind of darling, rookie that everyone seems to love and everyone has high hopes for. Which of these guys actually stands out? Which of these guys separates themselves? How many of these guys, they're not going to do it on day one, but I think we're going to get an early indication of who's leading that competition early, who they trust more right away. And it could, I don't know who it's going to be. I mean, I feel like Averett is the favorite right now, but he's a guy who hasn't been in Pittsburgh before. He's kind of on some similar footing to the rest of these guys. It's not like he has a leg up in terms of knowing the scheme, whereas, Darius Rush or Corey Trice might as well. But Beanie Bishop is, I don't know, I'd argue Beanie Bishop is maybe the most talented of the 3 or of the 4. So I think it could go in any number of directions, and that's what I'm excited to see play out.
Yeah, I think you just kind of steer off that. I think it's a good indication. It'll allow us to kind of get an understanding of whether or not the Steelers need to go back out and add somebody else. If Beanie Bishop looks good and you're like, oh, okay, look, for an undrafted guy, this dude does not look like an undrafted rookie. If that's a good sense. If Corey Trice looks good, if Darius Rush looks a lot better than last season, if Averett looks like a pro, like a dude who, like an injury kind of derailed his career, but that doesn't mean it's the end of his career. If that's the case, then I think we'll get some glimpse of that in OTAs, or at least the first week of OTAs. I think at the other side of that, you could walk into there and we could leave first couple days and be like, okay, the Steelers desperately need a slot corner. There's no denying it. These guys are just not good enough. And, granted, you might be facing like Calvin Austin on the other side of that, or Scotty Miller or Quez Watkins, but if they're getting smoked by those guys, there's probably no chance Jamar Chase or Stephon Diggs or any of those guys hold any ground, or they could hold any ground against those guys come the season. So I agree with that. I will be glued to the cornerback position just because, just for what you said, like who's the leader, who's the guy that we're watching, and at the same time, do you need more guys there if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers? Mine's on the other side of the football. Everybody's talking about, there's reports coming out this week about, the Justin Fields is going to get more reps than we anticipate with the Steelers. Is this Russell Wilson's team? Blah, blah, blah. Everybody's got those bold predictions. I said it last week. I'll say it again. Are the Steelers going to be as in on Justin Fields as everybody wants them to be, or are they going to be all in on Russell Wilson? Because that's literally all they've said, is that we're in on Russell Wilson and he will be in pole position, and Justin Fields will get an opportunity when that time comes, but this is Russell Wilson's job to lose. I just want to know where that stands. Where's the baseline? Where are we starting from? Where's the, okay, Justin just got 10 snaps today and Russell got 40. Okay, cool. Or is it, this is an evenly split and Justin's actually getting first team reps, and maybe this is an open competition or more of a competition than we see? Right now, it's expected that there's not a quarterback competition. People are just trying to force feed us there's going to be a quarterback competition. We'll get the first look at that tomorrow, and that's what I'm looking at. Is there a real quarterback competition or not?
Yeah, and this is kind of the time to do it. I feel like if you're the Steelers, this is I would try to gather as much information as possible as I can right now and try to have a very firm decision by the start of training camp. Like
Yep.
I don't want a competition to get in the way of, Russ getting real reps with everyone, getting some work in, pads in, getting to actually like see what things look like in the lead up to the regular season. Like
Yep.
I don't want to have to spend the first 3 weeks or whatever figuring out, oh, is Russ the guy? Is Justin the guy? Like, let's try to do this now if we can. And I understand OTA is a pretty controlled environment. It's not exactly like training camp. You're going to learn a lot more during training camp, but man, let's just try to put this to bed now. And I feel like the Steelers are going to it's going to look like there's a more obvious competition, but I think the Steelers are just going to try to exhaust their ways of getting to know Justin Fields a little bit, and they're going to try to learn everything they can about him now, as opposed to waiting down the line and seeing, and getting in the way of actual like season prep to figure out who their starting quarterback is.
Yep, exactly. And now is the time, just like you said, now is the time to do that, because you get to July, you get to August, and it's like, oh man, dude, Justin actually looks real good. Maybe we should have given him a shot. You're too deep. At that point, this is Russell Wilson's job, and he's going to hold on to the job. And we've said it so many times. Russell's not going to lose the job. Russell's not going to come in here and look bad. That's just not going to happen. He's a veteran quarterback, and this is a sport where the quarterbacks aren't going to do anything. You're not going to get touched. You're not going to face real crazy pressure. And if you do face real crazy pressure, you get to stand in there or run around and not get tackled for as long as you need to before you could throw the football. So I don't think Russ loses the job. The Steelers need to have an understanding of, should Justin Fields get a shot to win it? And I don't know. I don't know if that's where they stand and if they're going to actually do that. But I think tomorrow we will get an understanding of whether or not they will or not. And that's where my eyes are glued to. With that said, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, or check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as we've been saying, check out our new YouTube channel, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk clips for even more of the show. Find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.